My name is Dr. Prithvi Patel. I am working at UNMICRC Institute of Cardiology at Ahmedabad. I will be teaching today's topic anatomy of heart, and I will cover mainly cardiac chambers and conduction system. So let's start. So heart is located in the mediastinum. Mediastinum has mainly two parts: superior mediastinum, inferior mediastinum. Inferior mediastinum is divided in further three parts: anterior, middle, and posterior. In heart comes in the middle mediastinum of inferior mediastinum. So heart has a covering. It is called pericardium. It is of two types: fibrous and serous. Serous pericardium has the two parts: visceral and parietal layer. So heart is a pyramid shape with a surface, border, base, and apex, and that pyramid has fallen over its one of its side. Apex of this pyramid project towards the forward, downward, and to the left side. In this diagram, you can see the base and apex. Base is also called posterior surface, and then anterior surface is there. It is also called sternocostal surface, and diaphragmatic surface is there. It's called inferior surface. Both sides you can see right and left pulmonary surfaces, and margins also shown: inferior margin, which is acute, and obtuse margin, and apex. So base is also called posterior surface, which is mainly consists of left atrium, a small portion of right atrium, and the proximal part of great veins, superior and inferior vena cavas, and the pulmonary veins. Anterior surface is also called the sternocostal surface. The anterior surface faces anteriorly and consists of mostly right ventricle, with some of right atrium on right side and some of left ventricle on left side. In this diagram, you can see also that right side of heart, mainly shown with blue color in upper figure, shows that it is carrying deoxygenated blood, and it goes to lungs and comes back oxygenated, and it is shown as red on left side chambers. The diaphragmatic surface is also called inferior surface. The heart in the anatomical position rests on the diaphragmatic surface, consists of left ventricle and small portion of right ventricle, and separated by a posterior interventricular groove where the posterior descending artery lies, along with middle cardiac vein. This surface faces inferiorly and rests on diaphragm, and it is separated from the base of the heart by the coronary sinus and extend from the base to the apex of the heart. Both sides we have pulmonary surfaces. Both are broad and convex. Left pulmonary surface faces left lung, is broad and convex, consists of the left ventricle and a portion of left atrium also. On right pulmonary surface faces right lung, is also broad and convex, consists of right atrium. Here we come to margins. Right margin and left margin same as the right and left pulmonary surface of heart. Then it is obtuse margin, separate the anterior surface and left pulmonary surface. It is round and extend from the left auricle to the cardiac apex. And inferior margin, it is sharp, acute, edge between the anterior and diaphragmatic surface of the heart. It is formed mostly by the right ventricle and a small portion of left ventricle near the apex. Now we come to sulcus of the heart. First one is coronary sulcus, sulci, and anterior sulcus and posterior sulcus is separating interventricular sulcus. Then cardiac chamber is a two pump mechanism. One pump is for pumping the blood into the lungs to oxygenate the deoxygenated blood, and while returning of the oxygenated blood, second pump will pump to the full body. So now we come to the interior of the right atrium. Here diagram showing the internal view of the right atrium. So in that superior and inferior vena cava which are together. It delivered the whole body's deoxygenated blood to the right atrium, and also the coronary sinus also drains into the right atrium, which return the blood from the walls of the heart itself. The superior vena cava entered the upper posterior portion of the right atrium, and the inferior vena cava and coronary sinus entered the right atrium via lower posterior portion of the right atrium. The interior of the right atrium is divided into two continuous spaces. Externally, these two spaces are separated by a shallow vertical groove, which is called sulcus terminalis. That is the external appearance of the crista terminalis. Crista terminalis extend from the right side of the opening of the superior vena cava to the right side of the opening of the inferior vena cava internally. It is called crista terminalis, which is internal finding. External, it is called sulcus terminalis. So, crista terminalis is smooth muscular ridge that begins on the roof of the atrium just in front of the opening of the superior vena cava and extend downwards lateral wall to the anterior lip of the inferior vena cava. The space posterior to crista terminalis is sinus of vena cava, and it is derived embryologically from the right horn of the sinus venosus. This component of the right atrium has a smooth thin wall, and both vena cava empty into this smooth part. The space anterior to the crista include the right auricle. It is sometimes referred as the atrium proper. The terminology is based on the embryonic primitive atrium. Its walls are covered with ridges called musculopectini, pectinate muscles, which fan out from the crista like a teeth of comb. You can see clearly in this image. It looks like a teeth of comb. These ridges are also found in the right auricle, which is an ear-like conical muscular pouch that extends and over the ascending aorta. Unlike the left auricle is like finger-like, right auricle is like conical shape. In this diagram, you can see the tip of right auricle lying over the proximal part of ascending aorta. And inside we can see fossa ovalis also. I will come next. The additional structure in right atrium is the opening of coronary sinus, which receive blood from most of the cardiac veins except the Sebacean veins. Coronary sinus opens medially to the opening of the inferior vena cava. Associated with this opening are small fold of tissue derived from the valve of embryogenic sinus venosus, the valve of coronary sinus and the valve of inferior vena cava. During the development of the valve, the valve of inferior vena cava helps to direct the incoming oxygenated blood from placenta through the foramen ovale into the left atrium. So this valve helps to direct the blood which is coming from the IVC, and in IVC oxygenated blood is coming from placenta via left umbilical vein into IVC, and then into IVC via help of this valve blood will be directed to the left atrium via foramen ovale. The separating the right atrium from the left atrium is the interatrial septum, which faces forward and to the right because the left atrium lies posteriorly. So the septum between right atrium and left atrium is located slightly anteriorly because left atrium is posterior structure, right atrium is anterior structure, and towards the right. So depression in this septum just above the orifice of IVC opening is called fossa ovalis or oval fossa, and it has a prominent margin which is called limbus of fossa ovalis. The fossa ovalis makes the location of the embryonic foramen ovale, which is an important part of the fetal circulation. The foramen ovale allow oxygenated blood entering the right atrium through the inferior vena cava to pass directly into left atrium, and so it can bypass the lung, which is non-functioning during the fetal life, in uterine life, when the placenta is working as a lung of the baby inside the uterus. So we have to bypass the lung, so directly oxygenated blood from placenta to go to left side of heart. And then we come to another finding of right atrium, where the numerous small opening of smallest cardiac vein, also called foramina of vena cava minimi, also called known as Thebesian veins, which are not opening into coronary sinus, and they are opening directly into the right atrium via small openings. It drains the myocardium of right side directly into RA instead of going into coronary sinus. In this diagram you can see clearly the fossa ovalis with limbus ovalis, and both walls of IVC and coronary sinus, and both walls combine together superiorly, and it makes the tendon of Todaro. And on right side of tendon of Todaro there is a septal leaflet of tricuspid valve, and below we have coronary sinus. This makes the triangle of Cox, which contain AV node and bundle of His. In this diagram we can see also crista terminalis with the pectineal muscle and the RA appendage, right atrial appendage, covering the ascending aorta, proximal part of the ascending aorta. So now we come to right ventricle. In the anatomical position, right ventricle forms the most of the anterior surface of heart and portion of diaphragmatic surface. The outflow tract of the right ventricle, which leads to the pulmonary trunk, is the conus arteriosus, also called infundibulum. This area has a smooth walls derives from embryonic bulbous cordis. In this diagram you can see below the pulmonary wall the conus arteriosus. The wall of inflow portion of right ventricle have numerous muscular irregular structure called trabeculae carni. Most of these are either attached to ventricle wall throughout their entire length, forming the ridge, or attachment only at both ends, making bridge. So when it is attached through fully, it is called ridge. When it is attached only two ends, it is called bridge. A few trabeculae carni papillary muscles have only one end attached to the ventricular surface, while the other end serve as the point of attachment for the tendon-like fibrous cord, which is called chordae tendineae, which connect to the free edge of the cusp of the tricuspid valve. These are the three papillary muscle on right side, and these are named as anterior papillary muscle, posterior papillary muscle, and septal papillary muscle. One named papillary muscle is there, muscle of Cvts is also there. So in anterior papillary muscle is the largest and most consistent papillary muscle that arise from the anterior wall of ventricle. Posterior papillary muscle consists of one or two or three separate heads, and some chordae are directly attached to the ventricular wall instead of attaching to the papillary muscle. Septal papillary muscle also inconsistent papillary muscle, and it can be either small or absent or chordae directly emerging directly from the septal wall. So we have a single special trabeculum that is called septomarginal trabecula, also known as moderator band, forms the bridge between the lower portion of the interventricular septum and the base of anterior papillary muscle. This you can see clearly in the below image. There is a bridge between interventricular septum and anterior papillary muscle base. This is very important because it carries a portion of cardiac conduction system. The right bundle of the atrioventricular bundle, which is bundle of His, to the right wall of right ventricle. This is important in the surgery of tetralogy of fellow, ICR. So now we come to left atrium. Left atrium forms the most of the base, which is also called posterior surface of heart. Embryologically, it derives from two structures: posterior half, anterior half. Posterior half is an inflow portion which receives 4 pulmonary veins, and it has a smooth walls, derives from the proximal part of the pulmonary veins and incorporated into the left atrium during development. And anterior half is a continuous with the left auricle. It has musculopectining, same like RA, but the shape of left auricle is finger-like. So this part derives from primitive atrium, and unlike crista terminalis in the right atrium, here no separating structure is there which can separate the both part. They are separated by their surface, smooth surface and rough surface, and the auricle shape is finger-like. It is important, shape is important for a pediatric cardiac surgery where we can see isomerism also. Both auricle will be both side. Depending on that, we can label whether it is right isomerism or left isomerism. Then interatrial septum is a part of anterior wall of left atrium, because left atrium is posterior structure, so interventricular septum lies anteriorly, and there is a depression in this septum, that is valve of foramen ovale, and it is opposite the floor of fossa ovalis in the right atrium. During development in the intrauterine life, the valve of foramen ovale prevents the blood from passing from the left atrium to the right atrium backward. This valve may not be completely fused in some adult, leaving the pro-patent passage between the right and left atrium. This is flap-like valve. It can remain patent, and we will call it a PFO, patent foramen ovale. Now we come to the fourth chamber, which is left ventricle, main pump of the body for oxygenated blood. Left ventricle lies anterior to the left atrium, and it contributes to the anterior surface, diaphragmatic surface and left pulmonary surface of the heart, and it also forms the apex of the heart. Blood enters the ventricle through the left atrioventricular orifice and flows in the forward direction to the apex. Means through the mitral valve, it will go from left atrium to the left ventricle. Left mitral valve is also called left atrioventricular valve. The chamber itself is a conical shape. It is longer than the right ventricle. It has a thick layer of myocardium. The outflow tract, aortic vestibule, is posterior to the infundibulum. Infundibulum is the outflow of right ventricle. So pulmonary artery is anterior, RV is anterior, LV is slightly posterior compared to RV. So outlet of LV, which is aorta, that is also posterior compared to pulmonary artery. So this ventricle has a left ventricle has a smooth wall compared to right ventricle. Right ventricle has a more coarse trabeculae. Left ventricle has slightly smooth compared to. And this part is derived from embryonic bulbous cordis. The trabecular cornea in the left ventricle are fine and delicate in contrast to the right ventricle. The general appearance of trabeculae with muscular ridges and bridges is similar to that of right ventricle. The papillary muscle here are two, that is anterior and posterior papillary muscle, which are found in the left ventricular cavity and comparatively larger in size compared to when we compare to right ventricular papillary muscle. The anatomical position of left ventricle is somewhat posterior to the right ventricle, and the interventricular septum therefore forms the anterior wall of some of the wall on the right side of left ventricle. Here you can see both papillary muscle. They are they are labeled as anterior papillary muscle and posterior papillary muscle. Otherwise we can call anterolateral and posteromedial papillary muscle also. Important in mitral valve surgeries. Okay, so the septum is described. This septum means interventricular septum. It has a two-part, muscular part and a membranous part. The muscular part is thick and forms the major part of the septum, whereas the membranous part is a thin and it forms the upper part of the septum. And the third one part of membranous septum is separating atrioventricularly. So it is called atrioventricular part because this lies above the septal cusp of tricuspid valve, and it is located superiorly, and part of the septum is between left ventricle and right atrium. That's why it is separating ventricle and atrium, left ventricle and right atrium. So it is called atrioventricular part. And when there is a defect in this part, it is called Gerbeau defect. So there will be the shunt between LV to RA, but the defect is in interventricular septum. It is clearly shown in the below image where this open valve is tricuspid valve, and the atrioventricular part of the membranous septum is shown above the valve, and dotted line below it is showing interventricular part of the membranous septum. So now we come to the conduction system of heart. So you can see here SA node, AV bundle. Then AV bundle is continuing as a right bundle and giving off left bundle also, and then subendocardial plexus of conduction cell is also called Purkinje fibers. So this diagram also shows internodal fibers between SA node and AV node. They are divided into three parts: anterior, middle and posterior internodal fibers between SA node and AV node. And one more is there. They are going into LA. They are also shown the Ekman's bundle. The unidirectional wave of excitation and contraction is established, which moves from the papillary muscle and apex of the ventricle to the arterial outflow. So direction of muscle contraction, myocardial contraction is from papillary muscle and apex of the ventricle to the arterial outflow. Squeezing type of. So all blood from ventricle can be emptied out into the great vessels, great arteries. Now read about SA node. SA node is the pacemaker of the heart, so called cardiac pacemaker. a collection of cells located at the superior end of the crista terminalis, at the junction of SVC-RA junction, superior vena cava and right atrial junction. This also junction between the part of right atrium derived from the embryonic sinus venosus and atrium proper. Now we come to AV node, atrioventricular node, which is located near the opening of the coronary sinus, close to the attachment of the septal cusp of the tricuspid leaflet and in the atrioventricular septum. AV node is a collection of specialized cells that form the beginning of the elaborate system of conducting tissue, the atrioventricular bundle, which extend the excitatory impulse to the all ventricular musculature. Cox triangle is shown in this diagram very nicely. Coronary sinus, then STL, septal tricuspid leaflet, base of it, and tendon of Todaro. Content will be AV node and bundle of Heath. So it is an anatomical area located at the base of the right atrium. Boundaries are the coronary sinus orifice, tendon of Todaro, and septal leaflet of tricuspid valve. The tendon of Todaro is a continuation of Eustachian valve of the inferior vena cava and the Thebesian valve of coronary sinus. Here, this line defines how tendon of Todaro is made. And the triangle of Cox is an important landmark for the atrioventricular catheter ablation procedure for the localization of AV node. Now, bundle of Heath, also called atrioventricular bundle. This bundle of Heath is a direct continuation of AV node. It follows along the lower border of the membranous part of the interventricular septum before the splitting into right and left bundle. Right bundle is a continuation of bundle of Heath, while left is a branch of bundle of Heath. So, right bundle branch continue on the right side of interventricular septum towards the apex of the right ventricle. From the septum, it enters into the septomarginal trabecula, where it reaches to the base of the anterior papillary muscle. At this point, it divides and it continues with the final component of the cardiac conduction system, that is subendocardial plexus of ventricular conduction cells, that is called Purkinje fibers. This network of specialized cells spread throughout the ventricle and supply the ventricular musculature, including the papillary muscle, and the direction of contraction is reverse from this papillary muscle to the base of great arteries. Now, Purkinje fiber, also called subendocardial branches, and the left bundle branch passes on the left side of the musculature of the interventricular septum and descend to the apex of the left ventricle. Along the course, it gives off branches that eventually become the continuation with the subendocardial plexus, that is called Purkinje fibers. As with the right side, this network's specialized cell spreads the excited impulse throughout the left ventricle. So here I have shown blood supply. Mainly we'll focus on the blood supply of conduction tissue. So here right side we can see the right coronary artery, and that first branch is SA nodal branch. It can be from left circumflex also, but mainly it will be from right coronary artery. Then in the last HEART-Cce goes and it divides, it gives RV branches and marginal branches, and then it gives a posterior descending artery, PDA, and then in that one branch is going, before that going upwards, it's shown as a AV nodal branch. And on LCA we have a left coronary LMCA mainly dividing into LCX and LAD, and the first septal branch supplies to the bundle of Heath. Okay, thank you.